So now I'm going. Here we are. Hey, everybody. Nice to see you again. Thank you for joining today's super important topic, the future of zoos, because the future of zoos are tied in with the future of how our next generation perceives animals. So, very, very important topic. I think it's something everybody wants to participate in and discuss. And what we would like to do today is talk a little bit about that because as we have been promoting the movie, more and more people, the one thing that we do hear a lot is how are we going to educate our children? Now, the education of children is an important aspect in the movie. And what we wanted to do is start off by talking about let's discuss the zoos. One thing that's important anytime you're going to critically look at a topic, the one thing that's most important is to take every foundational argument and really examine it. That's the best way to do it. It's something that we've learned in Platonic dialogues. That's the idea. Drill down to get an answer on what the foundational, say, preconception is. Because sometimes people will just come in with preconceived notions as foundations and build arguments upon them. One of them that we always see is that the zoo does good. Now, that's a foundational argument that is lifted up by a few. One is conservation. One is intent, and one is education. And so those three, let's just take about those three. We've already talked about conservation. We've talked about intent and how everybody is. And now let's talk about education. Education is so important in the movie. There's a Harambe coloring book out there if you don't know about it. And this is actually signed by the artist right here. But this one was done for the movie, and you see it being colored in the movie. We saved it. We're going to get a frame for it here soon. But this is what we're talking about. Harambe as a concept has been turned into a coloring book. Now, this is really important because let's just think for a second that a lot of the kids that have this coloring book may not right away know the full story of Harambe. So the concept of animals in relation to modern society is either exploit them or use them as educational purposes somehow. So this brings us back to where we are right now, which is let's talk about the educational aspects of this. And again, education is one of the foundational arguments that the zoo gives. They say, you know what? If this is the only way kids are going to learn about animals and care about them. So let's see what everybody thinks about that. Hey, Stacy, thank you for joining. It's great to see you here today. And this is a very interesting topic, Stacy. I'd love to hear your take on it because this is the most complicated. We have to remember that where zoos are, they are booking field trips. They do targeted ads for children to come to the zoo. Now, this is why in Harambe, we discussed the fact that it is aimed towards children, it's targeted towards children, and yet they did not have a safety barrier in place to keep the children safe. And as we discussed yesterday, with a systemic form of racism built in to the past of the zoos, perhaps the reaction against the mother in the Harambe case was thought of from that perspective without anybody questioning it. So again, here we are. Let's go back. Let's take a look at the foundational arguments and consider if they hold up. So one thing is we had this beautiful comment from somebody the other day, and I wanted to share it with everybody. And this was off of our last video, and I thought this comment was very informative and a great representation of the type of mindset that we want to engage with and discuss and open up and maybe be able to show them a different side of things. So the traditional argument says that zoos are important for education because children can see animals and that will keep them going forever. So let's read this. All right, I don't think animals have the best, but I don't think animals have the best they can, but that 1 minute in front of a real wild creature will and has sparked inspiration into millions of children to learn more and care for our world as a whole. So this is a very standard argument that we do here. People have this perception that if the child can go see a live animal, that will spark the imagination. Now, the zoos say it, parents say it, we hear it from parents all the time. How am I supposed to teach my children to care about a zebra or a lion if they can't be around them? And that is an amazing question. It's a question we really have to deal with. But when we look at this argumentation of everybody there, that is, what we hear the most. Now, in order to respond to it, what we'd like to do is play a quick clip. And hey, Maxwell, thank you for joining. I see that you're with us here today. Here's what we want to do. We want to play a quick clip to discuss the educational components. And this is put together by Born Free. Now, Born Free is an organization in the UK and in the US that focuses on dismantling the propaganda of the zoos and discussing the reality of how zoos operate so that people can make their own decisions if they think it's something that is positive or not. So let's go ahead and discuss really quickly about what we think about these zoos. And this would be our movie's response to this concept that children need this to learn.
600 million zoo visits a year. We are fundamentally miseducating people, misleading them about what these animals are, their role in the natural environment, their role in the ecosystem, their interrelationship with other species. All of that is effectively lost. If it's educational, it's the most basic, trivial level of education. A poster outside an enclosure that has a picture of the animal, a picture of the world with a red dot on it, which tells us roughly where it comes from, and the Latin name, and then 2 lines about what it eats. I've even been to zoos where it's, got predators like lions. When you look at the what it eats, it says cattle. We are not educating people when they go to zoos.
None of the creatures in zoos have freedom. They're imprisoned. They can never be who they truly are. Socially, what they eat is chosen for them, who they're with is chosen for them, and solitary animals when they should be in groups when they prefer to be alone.
When you go to the zoo, the story never changes. The story only has 3 chapters: birth, life, and death. And life is broadly a sterile, meaningless existence because there are natural behaviors that cannot be performed in captivity, and therefore the animal withdraws from those behaviors, and we're bored by it. We're bored when we see a lion just sleeping again, and I guarantee, go back the next day, what will the lion be doing? Sleeping again. And because people's attention span in the zoo is very short, studies have shown that people spend maybe a minute, maybe 2, often less, in front of enclosures. They don't see the picture, they see the snapshot.
They don't see the picture, they see the snapshot. Now, as we've all been talking about before, these animals are born and bred inside of these facilities for the exact purpose of being on display, and remembering that they are only on display maybe 1/4 of the day, leaving the majority of their time. And in the Cincinnati Zoo case, when they have 500 species and only 100 species on display, leaving the majority of the animals in cages to live their lives out. We see the exhibits, the animals do not. Something very important to remember. So as we're talking about this, first, let's talk about education. So what is the education that comes from it? And now, according to Born Free, and they were saying that they did a poll and people spend under a minute looking at a display case, and that display case will have a bored, shut down animal in it. Like he said, what's a lion doing today? Is sleeping again, because they can't do what's natural to them. So we are watching them in an unnatural environment, performing unnatural behaviors, passing it off as education. So that does not pass the smell test. That is not a legitimate argument. Second part of the argument would be to ask where it comes from. I guarantee you can ask any kid that went to the zoo where the red panda comes from, or where the ocelot comes from, or where the the salamander comes from that they saw, they're not going to remember, Will says, that little red dot is not information. It's misleading. What is considered information is misleading. And the other big question that we always have is simply this: does it work? If we have had zoos for over 100 years, if they're telling us that the educational component will change the future for animals, can't we look back at the last 100 years of zoos, look at the animals in the zoos, and see where they are today in the outside world? I don't think it's a very compelling argument, and I don't seem to see any results that the zoo would see. If it's not enough children are loving these animals enough to go out and protect them in the world. Therefore, this education, as it's intended or sold to us as being an important part of conservation, is another X. It also does not pass the smell test. So we've got two very, very standardized arguments from the zoo, and none of those hold out true. Now, Sierra put up a great poll here. In your opinion, do zoos effectively and ethically teach children about endangered animals? That is a great question. Maxwell says, nope, absolutely not. And Stacy enjoyed the fact that, they say some of these lions do eat cattle. Let's see. Now, Stacy says, the zoo culture is deeply embedded, at least in the U.S. Every children's shows, Curious George, to name one, which instills all this political correctness in their cartoons, continues to show zoos as if they are the best thing since sliced bread. That has been confusing for children. And that's a very good point. There are TV shows about conservation, but it's actually behind the scenes of the zoo. I know because I have family members that watch it and love that show. They're not very happy about what we're doing with Harambe, trying to change these things, because they see these beautiful versions of the zoo. Now, the other thing that they see in the zoo, these zoo shows, are always the vets. They may as well just be named vets, not like zoo, rescue. It should just be called vets, because that is the only positive thing that we see on these shows. So again, to go back to education, are zoos providing an educational component? We don't really can't find the educational component. Again, the education is limited to a small plaque that most of the children don't read. I don't read them. I never did when I was a kid. Some kids do, but most don't. They want to see the thing. They want to be entertained for a moment, but more than anything, let's just be real. Zoos are places where parents can go and entertain their kids for an hour or two and just have a little bit of a break. Now, making all these animals suffer under all these fake pretenses so parents have an hour or two to go relax and have a place where their kids can play is not worth it. And as Ian says, if education means taking a sentient being and putting it locked up in a cage, that is miseducation, and that has to change. And I think all of us feel that. So we do encourage everybody to pass the movie along, have everybody watch it. You can watch it for free on Tubi. If you want to support our efforts, you can watch it on Amazon or purchase it at a different place. But the main key is education, and let everybody watch it. Let everybody that loves the zoo watch it, and then ask them what they thought. Really curious. So there is a little bit more that Will wanted to say about conservation and zoos, and I just wanted to play another clip from the movie to talk a little further about that.
The conservation argument throws a sort of, throws two arms around the issue like a big zoo hug. The narrative that is presented by that is, we're doing our best. We're the professionals. You can trust us. This is going to be tough, but it's going to be okay, because we're going to protect the species that you care about. And here are our ambassadors for you to take a look at. The truth of the matter is that the amount of resources, energy that goes from the zoo world into the wild is minuscule.
So that's another aspect. People take their kids to the zoo thinking they're going to learn about conservation. That is not the story of conservation that needs to be told. We need to be telling the stories of people that live where these problems are, and the innovative things that they do, and the tireless work that they do and the sacrifices these people make to keep their own environments alive. So again, the zoo as an educational component, let's really discuss it. Do children learn anything about the animals that will stay with them forever, aside from maybe the name of them? What's that? That's a giraffe. Kind of doesn't go much past that. Where does the giraffe live usually? Ohio? No, we are miseducating our children. And it is time that we start being honest with them, because we're at a critical point in the world where the next generation needs to be educated, and they need to be educated properly, and they do not need to be educated by the people causing the problems. So please, let's remember this. Let's discuss this. One of the most terrifying things Sierra and I were talking about the other day is the fact that there are school field trips to the zoo. And a lot of our friends that have seen the movie said, I don't know what to do. This is a very delicate and complicated intersection. What do I do? Do I let my kids go with all the other kids? Or do I explain this? Is this a learning opportunity to discuss captivity? There's a million ways to approach it, and there's a million ways to think about it, and there's a million ways to present it with empathy for the animals. So let's remember zoocosis. The animals are shut down. The educational aspects don't really exist, and if they do, they're minimal at best. The conservation knowledge is not being passed on at the zoo. If anything, it is give us your cell phones, and that's it. They don't even go into half the other issues involved in that. Then the other educational component is seeing the animal. If seeing the animal were to spark the kids' imagination and push them into action, would we have so many extinct animals right now? And will we still be mistreating them so poorly outside of zoos? Now we're treating them poorly inside and outside of zoos. And the only thing we're teaching children is that it's okay to put an animal in a cage and say, I'm more superior than that, and I know what's better. That's not that's not education. That's not the lesson we need to give. So please remember, everybody, join us on May 28th. Make your voice heard. You can do it from inside your house. You can do it online. It's the one day where everyone's looking online at Harambe. This is the opportunity for you to speak up for the animals. Tell us what you think. Tell the world what you think. Tell the world what you want them to know and how you want them to treat animals. Let's start to rethink it, because education element isn't working. As a matter of fact, in one of the field trips, and we bring this up in the movie, there was a gorilla killed by another gorilla in front of a class of children. So what was that education? This is a misguided concept. It's an antiquated concept, and we don't need it. We should leave it in the past, because there's no place for it in the future. And the only way we can do that is by phasing it out in the present. So thank you, everybody, for joining today. It's always great to be able to talk about these topics. Education, as far as we see it from the zoos, is a joke and is a weak excuse for them to try to sell tickets. Same that they're doing with their breeding programs. They're keeping animals inside their cages. They're not putting them back into the wild. They're not helping populations. No, zoo breeding does not help populations unless that population somehow leaves the zoo wall. So again, let's take a look at all these things. Is the zoo really delivering what it's promising? I would look forward to hearing your comments below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about all of this going on right now. The zoo is something that we're starting to see disappear because people aren't buying it anymore. And it's a great time for all of us to continue to speak and to make the changes that the animals can't, because they are born into a room that they never get to leave. Maxwell says, celebrate Harambe's birthday on May 27th. As a matter of fact, we will be having a birthday celebration for Harambe online. It's very exciting. We'll give you some more details of it. But our very own Nicole Slater, who has been an amazing part of our team since the very beginning, shares a birthday with Harambe. And we're going to explain later on, but that is one of the reasons that she is working with animals now, here and in Africa as well. Thank you, Stacy. Great to have you on. Great to talk to everybody. If you think there are important aspects that zoos can contribute educationally, please leave a comment. We'd love to see this discussion continue, and let's keep talking about ways that we can actually educate children for the future and to help not only them, but to help the animals, which in the end will help the entire earth and all of us. So you guys have a great day today. Thank you for joining. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. We're going to be continuing with all of our conversations up until Harambe Day, discussing every aspect of the zoos from a modern perspective. Do they still hold up? All right. Well, I can't wait to see the comments. Let's keep talking about it, and we'll see you guys.